Elena Vashilievna, Elena. Don't worry about me, came Elena's muffled voice through the door. Don't come in. The tense expression on the two men's faces relaxed, and they both went back to their places, in chairs beside the Dutch stove, and sat down in silence. In Alexei Turbin's room there was nothing more for his friends and kin to do. The three men in the room made it crowded enough. One was the bear-like man with gold-rimmed spectacles, the other was young, clean-shaven and with a bearing more like a guards officer than a doctor, whilst the third was the grey-haired professor. His skill had revealed to him and to the Turbin family the joyless news when he had first called on December 16. He had realized that Alexei had typhus and had said so at the time. Immediately the bullet wound near the left armpit seemed to become of secondary importance. An hour ago he had come out to Elena in the drawing room and there, in answer to her urgent question, a question spoken not only with her tongue but with her dry eyes, her quivering lip and her disarranged hair, he had said that there was little hope, and had added, looking Elena straight in the eyes, with the gaze of a man of very great experience and therefore of very great compassion, very little. Everybody, including Elena, knew that this meant that there was no hope at all and, therefore, that Alexei was dying. After Elena had gone into her brother's room and had stood for a long time looking at his face, and from this she too understood perfectly that there really was no hope. Even without the skill and experience of that good, gray-haired old man it was obvious that Dr. Alexei Turbin was dying. He lay there, still giving off a feverish heat, but a fever that was already wavering and unstable, and which was on the point of declining. His face had already begun to take on an odd waxy tinge, his nose had changed and grown thinner, and in particular there was a suggestion of hopelessness about the bridge of his nose, which now seemed unnaturally prominent. Elena's legs turned cold and she felt overcome with a moment of dull despair in the reeking, camphor-laden air of the bedroom, but the feeling quickly passed. Something had settled in Alexei's chest like a stone and he whistled as he breathed, drawing in through bared teeth a sticky, thin stream of air that barely penetrated to his lungs. He had long ago lost consciousness and neither saw nor understood what was going on around him. Elena stood and looked. The professor took her by the arm and whispered. "Go now, Elena Vasilyevna, we'll do all there is to do." Elena obeyed and went out. But the professor did not do anything more. He took off his white coat, wiped his hands with some damp balls of cotton wool and looked again into Alexei's face. The bluish shadow around the folds of his mouth and nose was growing deeper. "Hopeless," the professor said very quietly into the ear of the clean-shaven man. "Stay with him, please, Dr. Brodovich." "Camphor?" asked Dr. Brodovich in a whisper. "Yes, yes." "A full syringe?" "No." The professor looked out of the window and thought a moment. "No, just 3 grams at a time." "And often." He thought again, then added, "Telephone me in case of a termination." The professor whispered very cautiously so that even through the haze of delirium Alexei should not hear him, "I'll be at the hospital." "Otherwise I'll come back here straight after my lecture." Year after year, for as long as the Turbans could remember, the icon lamps had been lit at dusk on December 24th, and in the evening they had lit the warm, twinkling candles on the Christmas tree in the drawing room. But now that insidious bullet wound and the rattle of typhus had put everything out of joint, had hastened the lighting of the icon lamp. As she closed her bedroom door behind her, Elena went over to her bedside table, took from it a box of matches, climbed up on a chair and lit the wick in the lamp hanging on chains in front of the old icon and its heavy metal covering. When the flame burned up brightly, the halo above the dark face of the Virgin changed to gold and her eyes shone with a look of welcome. The face, inclined to one side, looked at Elena. In the 2 square panes of the window was a silent, white December day, and the flickering tongue of flame helped to create a sense of the approaching festival. Elena got down from the chair, took the shawl from her shoulders and dropped onto her knees. She rolled back a corner of the carpet to reveal an open space of gleaming parquet and she silently bowed down until her forehead touched the floor. Myshlaevsky returned to the dining room, followed by Nikolka, whose eyelids were puffy and red. They had just come from Alexei's room. As Nikolka returned to the dining room, he said to his companions, "He's dying," and took a deep breath. "Look," said Myshlavsky, "hadn't we better call a priest?" "Don't you agree, Nikol? Otherwise he may die without confession." "I shall have to tell Lena," Nikolka replied anxiously. "I can't do it without her." "And something seems to be the matter with her now." "What does the doctor say?" asked Karas. "What is there to say?" "There's no more to say," said Myshlavsky hoarsely. For a long time they spoke in uneasy whispers, punctuated by the sighs of the pale, worried Lariusik. Again they consulted Dr. Brodovich, who came out into the lobby, lit a cigarette and whispered that the patient was in the terminal stage and that of course they could call a priest if they wanted to. He had no object-tine since the patient was in any case unconscious and it could do him no harm. Silent confession. They whispered and whispered but could not decide whether it was yet time to send for the priest. They knocked on Elena's door, and in a dull voice she replied. "Don't come in yet, I'll come out later." And they went away. From her knees Elena looked up at the fretted halo above the dark face with its clear eyes, and she stretched out her arms and said in a whisper, "Holy Mother of God, intercede for us. You have sent us too much sorrow. In 1 year you have destroyed this family." "Why?"